how much time is an acceptable amount of time for the average person to actually put into these type of games?
Raid is all about the grind, and like you could easily put in 8+ hours in a day. With Honkai, though, it's kind of like Raid, but you don't have any energy refills.
Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. The bar has probably been raised in terms of what players expect. We want this many game modes, and we expect kind of all this stuff going on, but we also don't want to overwhelm people, new players that get that Path of Exile experience.
Because I've seen some people say, don't even have energy in the game that we're going to launch because I want to play as much as I want to play. What's a healthy amount of time, and should there be a limit or not?
Probably like an hour in the day should probably be enough.
But in this genre, I hate having to manual.
Really?
Doing the Hydra, if I have to like manual my team for 15 minutes, I'm out. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Fateless Podcast, and joining me from the Fateless team is going to be Simon and Dirk, and then our special guest this week is going to be Nubs. I never know what to call you. Is it Nubkex, Nubs, all that good stuff?
Yeah, but you can call me Kevin. We're going by first name.
Kevin,
here, so.
okay, yeah. I mean, everybody's always like, who the hell is Simon?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
but yeah, anyway, Kevin, go ahead and let everybody know what you're doing right now and where you come from as far as like gaming background and just kind of what you're up to and all that good stuff.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Well, I mean, you guys will have seen my body double, Veiled Shot. He was on the podcast before.
True.
Yeah, but no, I at the moment my main thing is I cover Raid Shadow Legends. That's my main channel right now. I've also started another channel on another gotcha game called Honkai Star Rail, so I'm doing that as well. That's sort of just kicking off, and that's fun. Very different games. We might even touch on that in the topics here today. In the past, like I started out on YouTube covering some random stuff, and then I did Heroes of the Storm, which was a Blizzard MOBA. Did some World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy 14. So I like role-playing games. I like strategy, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's sort of what I've been doing at the moment.
What would you say is your like favorite genre of game then? Because obviously MOBA, you've got MMO, you've got this kind of like strategy RPG.
Honestly, I think right now Gotcha is actually probably my favorite. I also really like TRPGs, like tactical RPGs. Like I'm playing one at the moment called Unicorn Overlord, which has to be the worst name for a game of all time. It sounds like a game for like, like you buy your girl, like your kid.
Unicorn Overlord.
Unicorn Overlord.
Oh goodness.
It's genuinely really solid. The story's not great, but the gameplay is great. You're building up squads. It's very, very
Is
anime.
it squads of unicorns? Is that what we're saying here?
Hmm?
Is it squads of unicorns that you're building up?
No, I wish though. I'm sure there's a mod out there somewhere. It's like high fantasy, typical stuff. It's good.
Unicorns play into it somewhere though.
They do. There's a ring of the unicorn and stuff, and you're like, I'm trying to keep a straight face during this story. Yeah.
Oh, sounds good. Well, I guess for today, like we really want to talk about a few topics which are just like pulled up again and again in this type of genre of game that we're building. So the first thing I wanted to really talk about was, how much time is an acceptable amount of time for, the average person to actually put into these type of games. And interestingly, I know that you've played AFK Journey, which is kind of like one of the popular ones right now. I know, obviously, you just said that you play Honkai Star Rail, which is a bit of a different style of game, but still sits in this genre, just more like the anime side of it. And then obviously you played a lot of Raid, which I know really well, and I know the kind of time sink that we put into that. So I guess, talk us through how you feel about that generally.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really tough question. You brought up a good point of like Honkai being in the same genre but very different, because that is so different. Like Raid is all about the grind, and like you could easily put in 8+ hours in a day, right, to Raid easily, I'd say. With Honkai though, it's kind of like Raid, but you don't have any energy refills. Like you've got your energy and that's almost it. And then they do story patches like every month and a half or so. And that's like you're actually playing through the quest. The story is actually really good. It's much more story focused. So they're good games for me to play together because Honkai is very non-demanding of your time, whereas Raid is. So I thought that was really interesting, actually. Two games in the gacha genre that have absolutely different approaches to how much they kind of want you to play or even allow you to play, really.
Yeah, I didn't realize that you weren't able to refill energy or anything like that at
So
all in
you
Honkai.
can,
Oh, you can.
but yeah, like there's only sort of the one summoning source. So like your equivalent of gems, like Stellar Jade, so the premium currency for that is sort of
Yeah.
used directly to fuel your summons. So typically you
Right.
use that just for summons. You'd only be buying refills usually if you're a big spender. So yeah, I think most people
and how
don't.
long then do you think is an average amount of time you would spend in Honkai or AFK Journey?
Like honestly, in Honkai, like I might hop onto it in the morning and play for 15 minutes and
Oh
then
wow.
maybe like 10 minutes in the evening. And then there might be days during the week where I'll do like a weekly, they've got a thing called the Simulated Universe, which is their sort of like roguelike exploration mode. I know lots of games have that sort of thing. They've got that, and that might take you half an hour. And then, when a new big patch comes out every month and a half or so, it's actually pretty substantial. There could be 6 to 10 hours of story quests. Like it's quite big.
Sure.
So that's sort of where the focus is. So it's totally different. It's completely different from Raid. Completely different.
And so do you find then, because that's kind of weird. It's almost like,
yeah,
okay, I'm going to put a very short amount of time in a day, but then this new bit of content comes out, which actually compels me to put in a lot of time. So do you find that, it's almost like, well, the type of player, is that going to be like, oh, okay, well, they will do that at the weekend because it's kind of like away from work, or, it doesn't seem like it adds up to the same type of experience,
Yeah, no, it is a very different experience. I think it's certainly much more casual focus, like no question, right? The amount of time you need to keep up is much more limited, and it is much more focused on the characters. It's like, oh, who's the new character in the story? Oh, they're going to come up on their limited banner. I can't wait. I'll save up my stuff and I'll get them. They'll be in the story quest doing fun stuff. I'll get them into my team and they'll change it up, build them up. It is a much more slow paced game, and they've got far fewer heroes in it as well because of that design. I think there's 40 or probably 50 or so. Like it's way smaller. Yeah. So it's just really interesting as a totally different approach. To the genre.
And maybe, and perhaps Dirk jump in as well in a sec. Like it might come sort of looping into my second point that I wanted to discuss, which was around, the depth of a game or the complexity in a game. Because we're probably, I'd say between the two models that you've spoken about there, we're closer to the Raid model in terms of our thinking for like grinding for gear, enhancing your team so that you can get like best speed run of teams for certain content, that type of thing. So I think we're closer in that direction, albeit we will have stuff like, roguelikes and bits that you said. But yeah, I'm just wondering, I know you did a video saying, is Raid too hard?
Yeah.
and you gave your thoughts on that. So where do you sit on that kind of like curve, complexity, challenge in a game?
So
what's your take?
With Raid specifically, I think that they very much hit on the formula early on, maybe intentionally, maybe by accident, of stuff actually being really hard. And I think they really leaned into that, and you can see it in a lot of the boss designs. Like they're typically very, very challenging. And I mean, one example I like to give with Raid is if you think about the Demon Lord clan boss. Like for me, I've been playing the game for 3 years, so I joined like a year or two into it. Like I came in and I had, your guides and Deadwood's guides and all of that. So that was straightforward enough in that sense. There's a guide there, but imagine actually sitting down and working out, how does speed tuning work in the clan boss? It's phenomenally complicated. So if you were a solo player without the internet, this would not be possible. But then, of course, we're in the modern world where you do have the internet and you can have that discussion online. And that could be interesting as well to sort of fuel that community, get people engaged. It's like, oh man, this boss is insanely tough. How do I beat it? Oh, cool. Look, there's these content creators making guides, or there's forum posts, there's websites, etc. So that can be an interesting thing. I'd say overall, I said in the video, I do think that Raid is a little too hardcore, actually. I think that, in my opinion, it's opinion, of course, it would probably do better if they toned it down a little bit. But at the same time, whenever you're criticizing Raid, it's like, damn, I mean, they've done pretty well.
They've done
over the
well.
last year, so
Yeah.
Well,
maybe they know better.
and you came in, 2 years into it. It was toned down a lot on launch. It was like there wasn't even an Ultra Nightmare clan boss.
Oh, right.
Nightmare was the max, so it was a lot easier. And all the
Right.
dungeons maxed out at 15, and there was no gear crafting. There was no faction wars. There was no Doom Tower. So it was probably 20% of the game it is now when it launched.
Interesting. Yeah. They keep adding stuff. It keeps getting more complicated. It must be quite intimidating as a new player. I mean, it's just a challenge, isn't it? As the game keeps
that's
going.
the biggest challenge, right? Is that they have to keep adding new content, which means that when I first started playing, like Brad was saying, there was at least half, probably less than half the game modes, so it didn't feel as kind of like crazy. Plus, gear didn't go to the same sort of level. There wasn't anywhere near the same number of sets of gear. There wasn't anywhere near as many champions. Like all of these things just get layered over and over the top because they have to keep adding content into these games.
And correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but that makes it a little bit of a challenge for us, because it's like, okay, 6 years ago when these games were being built, the bar has probably been raised in terms of what players expect. Like, we want this many game modes, and we expect kind of all this stuff going on, but we also don't want to overwhelm people and have, new players that get that Path of Exile experience where they open up the skill tree and they're like, whoa, never mind. So it's like we want to give players a lot of stuff without overwhelming them. So it kind of gets difficult.
And Dirk, I know that you've played like a ton of these different style of games, pretty hard into AFK Journey right now. So where do you stand on how much time and you've got a family and stuff, like, I think, we're all in a similar boat in terms of like time available to us here. Like, where do you stand on time you could commit and enjoyment of kind of like levels of depth in a game like this?
Just like time wise, I mean, it's one of those, like, I kind of like both. Like, I like when it's not too demanding, because sometimes you don't have time to play and you just want to get your chores done, and then that's it for the day. Like, all right, I got my clan boss in, I did my dailies, whatever, and you want that to be quick. So like, ideally, just like when you wake up in the morning, first thing you do is like collect all your rewards, maybe run your your dailies, and then as you're going to bed, you're finishing it up. And 15 to 30 minutes max. But there's other days where like yesterday I was feeling pretty sick and I sat in the bed playing some AFK. Sometimes I want to be able to play it like 12 hours. And that's why I'm wondering, like, when you talk about a Honkai Star Rail, like, does it just not even let you play? Like when you got that itch, you're like, oh man, I just want to keep going. You just like run out, like, oh no, you're done for the day. Hour. That's all you get.
Yeah.
That'd be a bummer. I don't know.
Yeah, it pretty much what you just run at. Like, you obviously have your story quests, but once you've done, like, there's a lot, right? There's a whole year of these quests and side quests. But I mean, if you got all those done, then yeah, you could totally run out of stuff to do and be like, okay, well, I guess I'll go play something else.
Yeah, that's what I'm. And then what about that roguelike mode in it? Does that give you enough like replayability if you're wanting to grind it out and just play a bunch? Or
so there are like different modes in it, and they're always updating it. I've not dived too in depth into some of them, but they're sort of like optional, much more difficult modes with nice rewards in there. But yeah, that's like really challenging. You play through the difficulties, but it would be more of a one and done type thing. And then you've got your daily sort of weekly grind that, well, not daily, but your weekly grind that you do, your runs. But it's more, I think from what I've seen from the community, like a year in, that a lot of people find it kind of boring and tedious now. It's like, oh yeah, just gotta do my roguelike mode this week. Just get it done.
so it's not something you're looking forward to, like, oh man, I want to get one more run.
Yeah, no, not really. Like, obviously at the start, it is. But yeah, as time goes on, like I still really enjoy it. I look forward to it, but I think in a few months you'd be like, okay, it's just, I'm doing the same thing again.
Yeah, it all. Yeah.
I mean, I do think it's quite interesting though. Like, so you say here, perhaps if Raid toned down the challenge of the game, they might see more players. Because I do know that games like Honkai, Genshin Impact, they have a much bigger player base, like probably 10 times the player base of a game like Raid. So even though Raid is extremely high performing in this genre, in this kind of like aesthetic, actually, I don't know if do you think that these other games have got a higher play base because it's kind of like the anime and it just attracts more players, or do you think it's because of the difficulty level? Like, where'd you sit with that?
Oh, it's a really tough question. Yeah, it's really tough. Like something I can see immediately, even from my YouTube demographics, like it's a very different age group, right?
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Much
Like
younger.
it's a much younger age group than Raid. And like you can even see it a bit in terms of some of the comments and stuff. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, like some of the things these guys commit, like, you know, people like their waifus, right? And you're like, you
Yeah.
don't
Well,
get that in
Dirk's
Raid.
one, like Dirk loves a waifu, so don't, you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
careful
That's
what
why
you
I can't
say.
play anime games because I'd be spending way too much on the waifus. Way too much.
Yeah. Like there was big drama I just saw, like silly stuff over whether one of the new characters was a lesbian or not. And I just you can imagine
Right.
that in Raid, like I've never seen anything like it. And like nobody cares about that sort of stuff.
God
So it's a
Seeker for
totally
sure.
different world.
Yeah. I don't know, Brad, where do you sit on this in terms of, you know, complexity of a game? Do you enjoy the level of depth that you get out of a game, like really like the one we're trying to build, which is more similar to a Raid Shadow Legends? Or do you find that you'd much rather just pick up a game and play? If I take gearing as a good example, right? So in Raid, there's 101 different options of how you build someone out, how you gear them, the masteries you give them, all of these different things that you can do. And then you take a game like AFK Journey, where everybody, from what I understand, I've not played the game, but I've seen it. Everyone seems to be wearing the same gear. Like basically, you collect one piece of gear, which then you feed across your whole team. Like, where do you sit on that?
Yeah, I tend to lean in the direction of more complex. Like, you know, I come from StarCraft and I enjoy like making spreadsheets and planning builds. And I mean, everybody that's watched my content knows like I'll spend 12 hours on a spreadsheet doing the math and analyzing. So I like when it's a little bit deeper, but I also like when I'm not forced to do that. Like in AFK Journey, they let me like save up my rewards for 3 days, before I like come in and collect. I think they have a mechanic like that. So
Right.
I think we should have a system where like if you miss a day or two, it like backlogs your daily quests or something. So you're not like, oh, I gotta log in every 6 hours. Like I don't like being forced to play, but when I do play, I like the option to if I have time, if I've got 10 hours, let me grind, let me play, let me research. So I he's talking about Honkai Star Rail kind of limits you. That was a big turnoff for me on Diablo Immortal was
Right.
they basically capped you. It was like, once you got to a certain level, they would nerf your XP just into the ground. You'd be getting like 5% XP. So you literally your weight, you're like 1/20th as efficient. They're basically telling you to log off. And so I was
Yeah.
like, and that made me not want to play. Whereas opposed to like Diablo 3, it's like, oh, I'll grind when I have time. So
Sure.
I kind of like the option to be able to do that.
But then I will say, like, so I've done these free to play challenges, and to be effective, to be challenging the top spots in these free to play challenges, I'm staying up till like 2 a.m. because I needed that reset to then get my next set of rewards in to get going again. And, I'm not going to sleep until I've got 0 energy on the account, until I've got 0, PvP hits on the account. Like, I'm literally exhausting everything that I can do. And it is exhausting, like, to me. I basically go to bed at 2, and then, as soon as I'm waking up, I'm on the phone. It's like, right, let's put some more time in. Like, so I guess rather than like, what do we like? What's a healthy thing? And I'll say this because I've seen some people say, don't even have energy in your game. Like, don't even have energy in the game that we're going to launch, because I want to play as much as I want to play. And then I've seen the counter argument to say, don't let people have too much energy, because it almost feels like they're forced to play a lot to keep up. And actually, you've then got the reverse. So it's actually not as easy as people think it is to make these type of decisions. Yeah, Nubs, what's your view? What's a healthy amount of time, and what's your kind of like view on this energy?
Yeah.
Should there be a limit or not?
Yeah, that's tricky. That's an interesting question, because there is that satisfaction as well, as you were saying, of you finish the day and you're like, oh, I min-maxed it. I did everything. Cool, super efficient. My account's looking great. If it's just constantly unlimited grind, it's sort of like, okay, I did well, but am I keeping up? That's a tough one. I don't know. I think a healthy amount for probably like a normal casual player, probably like an hour in the day should probably be enough to keep up and be going well. And like Brad said, you could have like stockpiles build up. So you say, okay, well, I haven't been able to play too much, but all right, great. I've got a day off today where I'm in the mood to play today. Great, cool. My stockpiles of energy. Let's go. Let's spend it. Like I've saved it up, and now's the time. That could be fun. Because it's tricky, isn't it? I think a small amount of time so that people can play like on their commute to work, to and from work, and keep up. But then it's also really good to have that complexity and be able to dive in and really go hard if you want to. Like one thing somewhat similar, but like with AFK Journey, which we've been talking about, one thing that actually put me off was that you can't customize the gear in your characters. At the start, I was like, oh, this is really cool, great. It's really simple, that's nice. But one thing I didn't like in that game was that, let's say that their version of the clan boss, the Dream Realm, you'd have like a ranking. And like for the first couple of days, like I'm doing well on the ranking, but then like every day I'm dropping down in the rankings. And I'm like, why am I dropping down? Do I just suck? And my strat, and then I went and I checked and looked it up, and I was like, no, my strategies are fine. I'm dropping down on the rankings because people are paying more money and they're getting more champions. Okay. And there's no efficiency for me to be had to like, oh, well, I can gear up better, or I can, use all that much skill.
So you can't use your skill based or your knowledge based to overcome that challenge, which is
into
basically where
people
Nubs. Play.
Come on into
Honor
Duel
is good. Yeah. That's a better mode for sure. But yeah, like that's something that's, and especially because it was a ranking system, it's like, oh, that's a bit depressing. Like,
Yeah.
That's one thing I like in Raid, is that you can take a huge amount of skill in terms of knowing how to gear up champions, prioritize gear, where to put that gear in your account, and it can have an absolutely massive impact. And that's very, very satisfying, I think, as a player.
Yeah, because I think the time frame you put on there, about an hour, I think that feels actually pretty good. Like in terms of, like a bit like we said with Honkai, actually, like maybe someone spends half an hour in the morning or on a commute, and then half an hour in their evening once they've kind of finished work and stuff, or maybe a bit longer. But ultimately, like an hour in a day for this kind of like leisure downtime, when you're doing what I would say is just doing the routine, like doing your core gameplay stuff. And then the difference here between perhaps Honkai and currently a Raid or what we're looking to build is, I think, if you want to try and enhance your teams, it might be that you spend an additional hour building out different builds, trying out different things, so that you've enhanced your team, so that when you then go back into your loop, actually it feels satisfying that you've improved what you're doing. But it's almost like, I'm putting this time aside because I really want to play right now. And then after that, you've kind of still got the beauty of like an auto, where all the stuff that you just put into action now feels rewarding because you've actually, you've put some time in. Go on.
Oh, sorry. Did you have a question? I thought
no, Karen.
On this topic of complexity, I have an interesting thing that I know hits me. I was wondering if Nubs and you guys feel the same. And I don't understand why this is, especially coming from like a 300 APM StarCraft background. But in this genre, I hate having to manual. Like if I like really? Doing the Hydra, if I have to like manual my team for 15 minutes, I'm out. Like I'd rather not play. And I don't know why that is, but it's almost like in this genre, I view playing the game as building the team and building the strategy. And then I just want to let it happen. And I don't know if maybe you guys feel the same, because I know for me, I would want to avoid like manual content being forced in this genre, but I don't know if maybe that's just me.
Yeah, I actually do agree with you on that one. I think it comes down to what feels more rewarding. Like you've achieved more as a player, where, building the team and like that's okay. I've achieved like a ton of knowledge and planning and resource management and all of it. Whereas just executing a team in manual, I don't think that feels as achieving actually, because, it's like, okay, there's obviously some knowledge involved, but it's just a bit more tedious. It's not the sort of high level achievement that you're like really proud of. It's not like, oh, you might go and brag about to someone like, I built a really cool team. It doesn't feel the same. Like I manualed this run for an hour. It was a pain in the butt. I didn't enjoy it.
Oh yeah, because like I know Saphira's streams. He'll be manuing Hydra runs for like 4 hours, and like I would be like, screw that.
I will say that, like when I first started playing Raid, bearing in mind we've been playing this game for a long time now. Like when I first started playing, I would do every clan boss manual. Like I was min-maxing my runs. Like I wanted to try and achieve my best run every single time I did it. And yeah, I mean, but I guess that was when I, I was probably one of the better players in the game. Like, it was way before pay to win became so crazy, and you could just compete by being good at the game. and obviously you needed good champions as well, and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, but by being good at the game, a bit like you were saying, Kevin, around the way you did AFK Journey Clan Boss. Well, for me, actually, the fun of trying to keep above everyone else was doing these manual runs, making sure that I was timing my abilities at the right time. This is before speed tuning was a thing. This is before AI settings was a thing. So, it actually made a massive difference at that point to manual versus going full auto. Whereas now, actually being clever with the AI settings should do the same as what you're doing for a manual run anyway. I don't, Dirk, where do you stand on this?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think the reason why, Brad, it's so frustrating, and I agree too. I love there's something like cathartic about like setting everything up for your guys so it can run on auto. You just press that button and watch it go, and just watch it go. Like, yeah, that's right. I built that team. It was all my smart planning that made this happen. That I could sit back and just watch my guys just crush. But I think is when you do play on manual, there's 2 times you have to do it. It's one where you can't get the AI to time out right, which is usually it's just dumb things like you're doing just waves in Doom Tower, and then you're like, all right, well, I got to make sure I just A1, 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 so that way my seers are ready to go for the next round, not wasting their stuff. So like it's not really like compelling gameplay. You're just stepping in to just hit A1 10 times before you go to the next wave. And then the other time to do it is like Hydra, because it's random. And again, it's not even like I mean, maybe others, I'm sure Paul disagrees, but I don't find it super fun too, because it's not like my choices, I guess, are wildly different. It's like I'm more so just timing it up with, okay, well, this happens, now I do X, or this happens, and now I do Z. And that's all. You're just stepping in. Like there wasn't like a really big choice to make there. It was just like, if this, then this, if this, then this. And like it, to me, it's just like, oh, I wish I could auto that, but yeah, I got to just step in those times. And
it's funny though, right? Because
I can't do it.
My background is massively World of Warcraft. Like, I used to raid in World of Warcraft a lot, and the most enjoyment I got out of that was min-maxing my performance in the raid. And if you're playing World of Warcraft, you are playing the game. Like, you can't just macro it. There wasn't like I'm just gonna sit there and press a button and it's just going to do this boss fight. I'm literally trying to min-max my actions within that kind of fight. And it's funny how this genre has gone into this kind of like very heavy auto direction. And actually, like, if you listen to people that hate on the genre, and there's plenty of those people, generally it's like, well, you don't even play the game. Like, why do you bother downloading this game? You don't even play it. You just hit auto and watch the guys moving around. So it's weird that we do play it on auto, and that's our preference, I think.
Well, that's so funny too with Raid. We're talking about how hard it is. And I think that's almost one of the good things about the game, is because initially you do think like, what is this auto battler? This is 0 skill. You just watch it happen. You're like, well, actually, this game's friggin' hard. Like, it's good luck pressing auto and just having it happen. Like, there's a lot of planning you have to do, and like just getting everything just right for that to work. And like I mean, everyone, like, you all like play Raid at the end game, like some of that new content when it comes out is very challenging, and it'd be like one genius will figure it out, and then everyone's like, oh, copy. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I think we're talking about if it should be easy or not. I think if the content's too easy, then it does give like I don't know, like credence to like the people who would say like, oh, just some dumb auto battle game. Yeah, it needs to be hard.
I saw a message in Discord. So we got like a big ideas thread in the Fateless Discord, and someone said, "This is King Arthas. This is a kind reminder that while you are trying to make the best quality of life features and content, please do not forget about the sense of accomplishment after finishing truly hard, skill-based tasks." I'm not talking long mindless grinds. I'm just talking about basically beating hard bosses, which a low percentage of players should be able to beat. And again, it's quite an interesting take, because I don't actually disagree with King Arthas here in terms of there should be some really tough stuff to do that perhaps you either you have to build your champions either really well for, or you need to invest a good amount of time in in game to be able to get the right type of items to do that. But also there's definitely a sense of, I don't know if entitlement's the right word, but this kind of like, if I can't beat it the first time I try, this content's broken. You know, that kind of like feeling that comes out of gamers nowadays. People don't want to play long and struggle. They kind of want to feel like they've done it day one. So where do we stand? Like, should we have content which is really bloody hard, like really tough to beat?
I mean, Dark Souls is a great analogy for it, really, where that is long, you play long and you struggle. And that game like is massively successful. I mean, actually, I played Elden Ring recently. I got myself a PS5 for Christmas. I actually didn't think Elden Ring was that great. I'm on the side. I didn't like it that much, but I beat it. Right. But what's interesting about that is people freaking love it. Like that was part of what put me off it. Actually, it was a bit overhyped because people are like, it's the best game ever. Like people really, really like it, and a big part of it is because it is hard. And that does give that massive sense of accomplishment. The downside, I think, from that is that there's a thin line between something being a cool challenge and you feel accomplished and something being really annoying. Yeah, I feel like Dark Souls goes over that line quite a bit. Or is stuff that's just annoying and it's actually not that fun. But that's sort of a preference thing as well.
We can clip that. Nubs' hot take about this game.
Yeah.
What's funny is I actually agree with you. When I played it, I was like, I mean, yeah, it's good, but I don't understand the insane hype. So I kind of agree with you almost.
And what's your take then, Dirk, on should there be like some incredibly difficult challenges within the game? And if there is, like, where should that sit? What type of content?
Like I don't know, everyone feels great the first time you beat like the new hard Doom Tower boss, because it's always like, oh shoot, I gotta come up with a whole new team for this one, and
yeah,
I don't know, it's just satisfying. It's the last one's always just challenging enough, and you know, usually you can beat it. Like it's not impossible, but you got to really like take some fine tuning, and I think that's good. And I think the people who are complaining when things are too hard, they're still coming in at it, like trying to figure it out and get it good. Like. Whereas if those same people would have just sat down the first try and beat it, they'd have been asking for more content instead. So I it's one of those things where it's like I don't want to say like they don't know what they want, but if they're complaining it's too hard, but they keep going at it and at it and at it, like, all right, this time I'm gonna get it. Like I think that's a good thing. Like they're having fun, even though it feels frustrating in that moment. And like
I think it also might depend on how like competitive the person is. Like everybody's got a different personality. Like some people just don't care. Some they just want to have casual fun. And some people are like, no, I do want to, like, I know for me, some of the most fun I've had in gaming recently is when my friend showed me the game Factorio. And we built our base and we beat the game. And then I saw there's an achievement that only like 0.8% of players have beaten the game in under 8 hours. And I was like, dude, we got to restart and we got to get in the top 1% of players. And because of just that little carrot dangling out there, I played the game like 100 times more than I would have. Instead of just being done with it, I was like, dude, we got to go for that. That'll be fun. And it was a blast trying to achieve that goal of seeing like, oh, only 1% of people have done this. Can you do it?
And that's actually a good call too.
What's that?
So I think a lot of times people get salty about if content's too hard. It's because there's a good rewards behind that content, usually farmable rewards, and they just feel they're like Hydra. You want to get that stone skin set because it's just the best for PvP. And if you can't do Hydra, you're feeling like, well, every week you're just falling behind everyone who can because you're not getting the good stone skin they are, and it's frustrating because you're like, oh geez, like I'll never be able to compete now. Whereas like if it's hard content that just gives you an achievement or something like that, like or it's like a nice good one and done, you don't need to have like farm it for the best gear or something, then I think people do get like less salty about not being able to beat it on the first try because they don't feel like they're falling behind because they can't. And for them it's like a goal, like eventually I will beat this, I will get that achievement. It might feel too hard, they might get frustrated, but I guarantee at the end when they do beat it, they'll just pump like, yeah, finally, and then they'll get their achievement, whatever, get to move on without feeling sad like, oh, I guess I'm just never going to compete in PvP anymore because I'm 3 months behind on Stone Skin, and how can I ever catch up? So
yeah, well, I think there's a couple of things. So our achievements and masteries are linked to you achieving things in the game. So our whole mastery system is going to be based on you actually going out and achieving things in the game which unlock masteries, which you can use across any of your heroes. So, and I think we're going to have some really hard ones to get, some pretty rare masteries that are only unlocked by achieving some really tough content. And by that, I mean, it might be content that you can beat, but it might be, okay, well, you need to beat it with, I don't know, three champions, and you need to do it in under a certain time. You know, whatever it is. Like, I don't know what the rule set will be yet, but basically, we'll be giving people those type of challenges, but it won't be a fundamental thing you have to do to be able to play the game and enjoy the game. It's just something to try and strive towards, you know, certainly for like more end game players that are trying to do something which is incredibly difficult to do. Which I think is quite a fun angle on it, because what you don't want to do is just frustrate players by making content just straight too hard. And there needs to be quite a nice curve to content in terms of enjoying it, feeling like you're advancing without just hitting like hard brick walls all the time, you know?
Nubs may not have known that. Kevin, did you know about our mastery system?
No.
Yeah.
I
so
don't know all that much about the game.
Yeah, so like, well, and obviously this is all subject to change, but so the basic explanation is like, in order to get Helm Smasher, like the mastery in Raid, you would need to do something like clear Dragon 20 in under a minute, you know, to earn that mastery. And then once you earn it, now you get it account wide to use it wherever you would like. What do you think about that spin on trying to have a unique perspective on masteries?
Yeah, I think that's actually pretty cool. Like, yeah, a little sort of quest-based system. Yeah, I think that's really fun. Yeah, I'm down for that.
And obviously there'll be some very easy stuff to get, low-hanging fruit that you just kind of like pick up along the way, but then there'll be some, there'll actually be some masteries which are completely hidden. So you've got absolutely no idea how to get them until people in the community start unlocking them. And then I hope is actually with a kind of like community focused group that, you know, people will be saying, hold on a minute, I've just got this mastery because I did this. And then, you know, obviously the word starts to spread, and that'll be quite a fun moment when perhaps you're the first person that's unlocked, you know, this kind of like secret mastery.
Delete all the gear on your account and you get a mastery, guys. I swear.
Write it down.
There could even be like a notification that goes out, like world first unlock of this. It just happened. Yeah. Like, you know, there could be like a notification that goes out.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, in terms of, I guess, game modes that you do enjoy then from these type of games, which ones, I guess, Kevin, if you were building this game right now, like which game modes would be your first, I don't know, 2 or 3 from games that you've played that you would make sure was in our game?
Ooh, interesting. Well, I mean, I guess I'm somewhat infamous, obviously, in Raid for really liking Hydra, which isn't super popular. But I mean, again, just giving my personal take, I really like Hydra. One of the things I really like about it is that it's not like a specific speed tuned boss. So it's not like bust out my calculator or, you know, a clan boss calculator someone else built and slot things in very specifically. It's a much more just sort of go with the flow. I say loosey goosey.
Did you play Raid before speed tuning was a thing? Were you playing at that point?
No. I joined.
See, this is the thing. Like, so I did. Speed tuning was not a thing. It was literally just like, I'm going to make my champions as fast as I can whilst hitting these stats. And so every boss was kind of loosey goosey initially before we unlocked all of the code of the game. And it was actually, honestly, it was more fun. Like doing clan boss, you're just like, I've hit something here. I don't know how. Maybe I hit a speed tune. I didn't know. It was just, it just went well. So that's an interesting take on kind of speed tuning generally, actually.
Yeah. Like that's what I like with Hydra. Like that is how I build champs in Hydra. It's like, all right, I'll try aim for like these sort of stats, and I'm focused on the synergies and just sort of go with it and see what works. So I really like that with Hydra, and that's extremely complex. But I actually something I really enjoy is because you've got the bigger team as well, which is kind of an interesting feature in the game. It's a 6-man team instead of 5 or even 4-man in some of the content. So you've got more flexibility with your team. You need to bring in lots of stuff, and it's like, oh, how do I move these pieces around to build a good team? It's something that it seems a lot of people don't like, but for me, I personally really do like. So that one definitely stands out for sure.
Just while you're thinking, so I didn't like Hydra at first because I felt like it was too random, right?
Mhm.
So I couldn't control enough of the fight. So it meant that manualing was almost required early on. They actually
Yeah.
made some adjustments, which massively for me improved Hydra. So now I can run auto teams. It comes back to what we were saying earlier. I can now run auto teams because I'm bringing in the right components to be able to control the fight. And then it becomes more like I'm building a team skillfully with the right pieces. And then I can kind of what I'd call semi-manual, because I let it manual, but semi-manual. I kind of let it auto, but every now and then I'll just be like, focus that head, focus that Hydra head, because I need it dead really quick. But other than that, I actually do now enjoy the game mode. I think it's much better.
Yeah. It was an interesting one where they did have to nerf the boss as well when it first came out. It was much tougher, and they had to reduce the stats. They had to let you provoke one of the heads, which limited a lot, made it much more controllable. So they did have to take away some of that randomness because it was just too random. It was too hard. And I think generally speaking, I think the community likes it much more actually after they tone it down a little bit. So it's like trying to, what we were talking about, trying to find that right level of challenge so that it's satisfying while still being challenging, but not to the point where you're like tearing your hair out, like, oh my God, it's just cleansed everything. Here we go again. And I'm dead. Great. That's nice.
Yeah, it just goes out of control. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, another mode I really enjoy, which I don't know if you guys are going to do actually, is again for Honkai, it's probably actually the story. Like I've played other games, like I played AFK Journey, I played Dragonair. They've got a story. Didn't like it actually. I enjoyed it for the first week or so, and then I was like mashing the skip button, getting through. Something I like about Honkai, I actually genuinely like the story, and that's something I'm looking forward to. I think that's genuinely extremely difficult to do. And it's really the focus of their game as well. It's the focus. So, but like that's something that draws me to that game in particular. And then in terms of battle modes, I actually do like Arena in Raid actually a lot. And it's funny we're talking about auto and manual as well, because in some games, I like in Raid, and you go into live arena, and I manual live arena, of course, and that feels like it makes a whole lot of sense. I think in Dragonair, like you go in and arena was fully auto, and I was like, this feels weird. Like this is the place where I'd want to be manualing, against another player. It's because it's more of that live action combat style, whereas Raid being turn based, it works with the manual style.
Sure.
Yeah, I find arena enjoyable, and I do find that enjoyable to manual and be like, how do I beat their team with my team, play it as best as possible up against another player, I think is what makes that exciting for me.
Yeah. Well, how do you feel, Dirk? I know you play a number of these games as well. What's kind of like, and I think you're more of a PvP player generally,
in
right?
Raid 2, I did play live arena. I think I stopped before they came out. There's definitely something I wish that was there when I was playing, but arena I had a blast with. That was like the entire reason I stuck with that game as long as I did was I don't know, it's just very fun. Like you see all these defense teams up there, and even though everyone always says, "Oh, this is the meta," it's the same. There wasn't always the same characters. You'd see a good like handful of different types of teams because not everyone had the same stuff. So there usually be about 10 or so different teams floating around, and it was fun to come up with different counters to that. Especially someone like I wasn't a whale by any means, so like I had some good champions, but not like all of them. So it was like using the tools you had to try to beat the stuff in there, and I came up with some teams I thought were pretty clever that would do it really well. Like when everyone's complaining about the back in the day, the old speed meta. I was like, speed meta, just like 2 skull crowns and a seeker. You'll kill 100% win rate. You'll every single time. It's like not hard. And then I almost think like they went overboard, like with his first the Swift Berry, then the Stone Skin, to try to like make speed not the meta, but I don't even think it was in the first. Like, if someone had like an Arbiter, Lysandra, Trunda, Cirrus team, that's a free win. Like, put up a better defense. Like to me, it started losing it once everyone became invincible, and you had to go for the 50-50 on Stone Skin and like
So what about then in other games you've played? Like in terms of game modes, would like the classic arena from a Raid still be up there as one of your favorite game modes that you'd love to see in our game, or is there kind of other stuff that you'd
for sure
forward?
like because like I said, it's always I hate when games like I guess just get solved, and I feel like the arena mode is the one place where because it comes down to like, well, do you put in procedurally generated content? And that's never as good because it always just feels like some random variation of the same thing. But I feel like Arena is one of those things where it's almost like the players get to create the content for the game. So every time I, pull up my Arena list, I'm like, I look at all the teams I can go against, like, shoot, all right, I think I could beat that one. And then I'm like, looking at my characters. And then I'm thinking about this when I'm not playing the game. Like, oh man, what do I do against these tournament teams? Like, can I try this? And like, you're always just trying to come up with like a counter or something. And yeah, I don't know. To me, like that keeps me so engaged in it. And it's always like just essentially infinite content. So yeah, I mean, I would rank it as being super important. Although I know like community poll wise in these games, it's not, I don't know. I think I might definitely
it tends to be more of a niche. Like the people that love it really love it. And in fact, does Honkai even have PvP at all?
No,
not at all. No, I didn't think it did. So that's definitely a direction that some games go. They value it so little that they don't even put it in the game in any way. Brad, what about you? I know that you like generally your game preferences are PvP games outside of this genre. Is there particular game modes that you would enjoy or would want to see in our game?
Yeah, for me, it's 100% normalized PvP. I with my like with my like StarCraft background, I hate pay to win. I my mind just shuts off when I know I'm at a disadvantage for something I can't control. I just get frustrated and I don't want to play. So like that's why in Raid, people always give me crap for this. Like, oh, you're a content creator, you don't go for Platinum Arena. I'm like, no, I don't care. Like once I have to spend to compete fairly, my brain just doesn't want to do it. But like an AFK Journey, it's like, oh, I can do Honor Duel, and like you can't spend money. Like I'm in. I want to go for top 10. Like I want to do this. So for me, it's normalized PvP, but same thing as Dirk. I think I'm a little bit of a minority because of like my StarCraft background, and I really like that like one-on-one PvP. Let's see who's better today. I like that just because of my background in gaming.
But is there enough skill? I've not played that game mode. Is there enough skill to it to say I'm winning because of my skill level, or is it?
Yeah, it's 100% skill. Probably the most skilled game in the world.
Yeah.
Where are you ranked right now, Dirk?
It's one of those things where like just if you're doing even an AFK mission, sometimes you'll lose the mission and you'll just like swap the position of two of your guys and then you crush it. So it doesn't seem like there's a ton of skill to it because you're just putting your guys out and watching them fight. But a little teeny tiny change can go from you getting like just rolled over to you all of a sudden just crushing it. And it's like, well, if that one, like, I guess to be like a top player, you have to just kind of know, like, all right, if I put this guy here, it's gonna significantly up my chance of winning this fight versus if I put the guy just one tile back. And like, I mean, learning that, like, I feel like I don't know. I feel like a huge noob, to be honest, in the mode, but I'm ranked 3 right now on our server, so it's doing well enough. But even I feel like I'll go into some like, why did I put this guy here? What a dumb spot. And yeah, but I mean, there is a lot of outside your control too, because it is still like a Hearthstone arena mode where you're kind of like drafting as you go. And like sometimes the RNG like in the shop just does not go your way. And you're like, well, this runs over. I'm screwed. I have 0 legendary characters. Every team I go against now is gonna have like a mythic and all legendary. You're like, I'm done.
I would say like you have like StarCraft is 95% skill, 5% luck. You have like Hearthstone Arena is probably like 70% skill, 30% luck. I would say AFK Journey like flips it. I would say it's like 30% skill, 70% luck.
Oh, really?
So,
as low as that?
Yeah. So I almost think,
Dirk, what are you saying? Because top 3 doesn't sound as good anymore.
Well, I'm talking crap about myself because I'm ranked 9. So me and Dirk are both up there. But because like you can be the best player in the world on AFK Journey, and you can go 0-3 3 straight times. Like whereas like in Hearthstone, if you're the best player in the world, you're not going 0-3 3 straight times. It's just not going to happen in the Hearthstone arena. So like I think we should be closer to like the 70-30 if we do that mode. Because like the Hearthstone arena felt right. It's like there is some RNG and every run is unique, but the really good players get rewarded for that.
Yeah. It's interesting actually because PvP generally, as I say, like in this type of genre, it's kind of looked at as, it's stuffed in there because we should have it, but most players seem to prefer PvE. But then if you look at games that do PvP really well, like League of Legends, like I don't know, games like Teamfight Tactics, Hearthstone Arena, like all of these games where it is that they're basically their fundamentals are built on PvP. Basically, what they do is they have a level of balance within their game. So if something is just outperforming something else drastically, then they will balance that pretty swiftly. Or they'll let it run a bit, but they know about it, and eventually that that's going to be balanced either up or down. So how do you feel about balancing in PvP in a genre like this?
Go ahead. Go on.
Yeah, I'm always like I said, I'm always hesitant to nerf. Like in Watch where they nerfed Boreas recently, and I feel like that's actually been the downfall of the company. Since then, it feels like everything they've done has just been a bad move. And I don't know if it's like they burned goodwill and everyone's just like less receptive to some of the things they're doing now, or just want to be angry about it, like myself included. But that game's PvP is hardly PvP though in the first place. That's a whole different thing. But yeah, I'm never a huge fan of like nerfs so much as I like to first see like introduction of things, better counters. So like in a hero collector game like this, just put out some heroes that just hard counter whatever the top strat is, and then let that play out first. And if that thing still can't be beaten, well then then if you can't like custom design a unit to counter it because it's so powerful, that it's probably broken. But
I don't know if I'm on the same page. Maybe I'll let Kevin. Maybe if you give your view. I don't think I'm on the same page as that, but
interesting. Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm on the side, but I don't know where I would stand in terms of how popular it would be. I'd be on the side of lots of balance changes, but like if I think about, let's say, Raid as an example, like I know from saying it in videos, I get a lot of comments that do not agree, but like I personally am totally cool with it. But I think that also ties into the type of player I am as well, where I'm not particularly attached to like any one particular or two particular characters or teams. Like one thing I like about Hydra is coming in and constantly trying new stuff and new champions. So if they come in and they're like, we're nerfing X champion with big thighs, I'm not gonna start breaking down in tears and crying. Like I was
gonna
like,
get
okay,
Simon in
cool.
trouble. That was what Simon wanted for years.
Yeah, I know. I remember
Great.
watching that video.
Yeah.
I think that was before I was a content creator, and little did I know we'd be back to that debate years later. But no, like if something is nerfed for me, I'm like, okay, well, what's the next thing? Some of that comes from, again, having a bit of a MOBA background, or like World of Warcraft. There's constantly balancing and stuff like that. It's never as good as you want it to be. But that's sort of what I'm used to, and I really don't mind. I think it is trickier with gacha games, where it is more of the collector. It's like, you're playing halfway through Pokemon and then Charizard gets nerfed. You'd be like, what the heck? My Charizard. So I think it is tricky in this type of game. I see a lot of people, I think that's how they feel, is that if you're nerfing their champion, that they've just been really excited to pull the champion, really excited to build them up. They put all this work in, and then suddenly you've come in and you've nerfed it. That people can find that very frustrating. So like for me, I wouldn't, but other people do. So yeah, it's a tough call, and
I understand like the meta shakeup aspect. Like League of Legends was doing it, and Dota does it a lot now. Whereas after every like tournament season, they'll just like completely redo, like almost rework some characters.
Or they massively change items, which is doing the same thing. Actually, it does the same thing, but indirectly.
It almost feels like a new game, and it does keep it fresh. Like that's how those games can last, over a decade and still feel fun every time you sit down and play. Because like the game is just, I mean, I played League over 10 years ago. I play it now, same with Dota, and they're like completely different games in a sense. They feel familiar, but the metas and all that have shifted so much, as depending on who does what now, and that is fun too. But yeah, because in this kind of genre, like it's hard to nerf, so I'm always a fan of just buffs over nerfs. Like if Trunda's the best DPS, what if you just buffed like 3 other DPSs, and then also Trunda's just like third best DPS now, and like you get power creep from that, But then some of that power creep also solves in the long run, it solves that, oh geez, this game's too hard because well, eventually the characters will just be a little bit stronger, and then it suddenly won't feel so hard if you just kind of stick with it. So that's kind of the way I like to lean on that one. But obviously, like I said, when things are just broken and you can't even introduce a counter to it because it's just so absurd, then then I'm sure no one's gonna feel sad about that nerf.
Yeah, the challenge I've got with just introducing a counter is basically that means that until a number of people have gone out and got that champion, you've still got the same problem for the vast majority of the player base, and this is what I struggle with. I know nerfs are an evil word in this type of genre, but maybe that's just because it's just not done often. Like when you got this one-off nerf and it's an absolute clanger, they come in and they absolutely destroy these champions. You're just kind of like, oh man, like that feels so bad. But I don't know if you've got a monthly, these champions are improved, these champions are going to be dropped back, but it's kind of like small percentages of either multiplier or something small within their kit. I feel like that's easier to stomach because you're expecting something like that to happen. You never want it to be the champion that you own that's getting weakened. But then you're also looking to see if any of the champions you own are being improved at the same time. So I think because generally it's done as a one-off and it's this kind of like massive nerf hammer, it's frowned upon even more. But I don't know. That's my view. Like as a player, that's my view. I don't mind tweaks. Yeah, go on, Brad.
No, you're fine. I agree with Simon, but the one thing I would add to that is I think buffs should be more common than nerfs. Like, if you come out with a monthly balance tweak and it's 5 buffs and 5 nerfs, I think that feels bad. But I think if you're like, hey, these 7 are getting a tune up and these 2 or 3 are getting a tune down, as long as the buffs are more than the nerfs, because like I came from the Diablo community, they ran into the same thing. It's like, oh, you have 6 classes. One class is just dominating every other class. It's like, do we buff the other 5 or do we nerf the one?
Well, this is the question, isn't it? That's exactly the question. Do you buff this one champion or do you nerf one champion or do you buff 30? It's those numbers
you guys
don't
can
make
look forward
sense
to
to
that.
me. Yeah.
No matter what you do, someone's gonna be really.
But the
yeah,
reason it's so
pissed,
divisive is because in this genre, it's not like Diablo 3 where, I bought my game and I played for 10 years. It's like they spent money to go after a fusion or they spent money on shards and then they pulled a Trunda and they're super hyped. Like, I just pulled the best DPS in the game. My money was worth it. And then if 2 weeks later, what, are you kidding me? You're nerfing Trunda? That's why it gets so like heated and divisive.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, interesting challenges ahead, I think. But no, I think it's been a really fun discussion, honestly. I think there's a number of things that we're trying to solve for, and obviously seeing what other games do well, or just people's opinions of how other games are approaching things is really helpful for us. I just want to say, Kevin, thanks for joining the podcast. Awesome to have you on. Brad, do you wanna see us out?
Yeah, you bet. Thanks everybody for watching this episode, and a massive shout out to Kevin Nubkex for joining us. We'll link to his stuff down below along with all of the things you're going to need to interact with us, the Discord link if you want to share your opinions on some of the topics that we discuss as well. And we will see you soon in the next episode. Peace.